third panel is on operations and achieving operational excellence. And we have coming up on stage, we've Jarlath Dooley, who's the former Chief Operating Officer of Version 1, an incredible Irish technology company which scaled from 2 employees to 2,500 and a valuation of over €1 billion. He is on the advisory board of Fitzgerald Power, and we also have Stuart, who I don't think I need to introduce again. But just to initially, Jarlath, just to talk about, to go back in time to the early days of Version 1, which is the bit where you're trying to get from 10 to 50 people. What were the big challenges you were facing operationally and at that time, and what advice would you give in relation to getting from that 10 to 50?
Yeah, probably the most difficult phase of a business, I think, is probably getting to 100 people. And you spend every day problem solving and trying to deliver to your customer, trying to make a profit, and trying to get the people on board, and you don't spend a lot of time sitting down saying, what do we want to be when we grow up? So it's figuring out who you are as a business, or who your customers are, what their need is, and what part of that you're filling, and then understanding that in terms of your commercial model, your business model, and saying, can this scale? Because your business model may be perfectly fine in one geography serving a certain set of customers, but it may not scale 10 times that. So you start with your business model and then your vision for that, and behind that comes the operational scalability that we'll probably touch on.
And Stuart, like Fitzgerald Power, you've gone on that scaling journey. You're over 70 people today, hopefully heading towards 100. What have been the lessons that you've learned about operations in going on that journey from, as you said, like a relatively small business to where you are today?
Look, the scalability, as Jarlath says, I don't have experience behind 100, but certainly it has been a challenge to scale it to this point. And to Jarlath's point, it's understanding how you put the systems in place, how you put the people systems in place, Tom, how you put the operating systems in place to really scale a business is a challenge, I think, for founders and for early stage company owners. And the reason is that we tend to be very good service people, very good product people, or very good on sales and marketing. But no one really starts a business because they love process and they love systems, right? So when I think back to the early days, myself and Noel, I was covering marketing, I was our events person, we were doing the service, Noel would do HR, Noel was doing finance. He seems to have more than me now when I do it like that. But we were covering all the bases, and that was fine when we were like 20 people. But that wasn't going to get us to the next point, So we had to really understand, what are the gaps here? What do we need? How do we build a process that can actually scale with the business? And, it's been not without its challenge. It's been something that we've had to learn in real time. We've had great support along the way, but getting that platform in place is fundamental. You can have the best plan in the world, but if you don't have a system that can scale, and if you don't have people that can grow with that business, then the strategy won't be delivered.
And Jarlath, with Version 1, I mean, you bought over a dozen businesses at different points. But thinking back to that first business, what advice would you give in terms of a business that's thinking of making its first acquisition? What does it need to do, operationally to prepare for that? And how does it deal with it afterwards in terms of when you're merging their business into your business?
Yeah, it's a very attractive, almost sexy proposition to do an acquisition, and people get really excited about it. I think to ask yourself, at every stage of the process, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Where does it fit in our strategy? Why do we say M&A is a good idea? Because they are incredibly difficult. And everybody comes back and says, oh, they're great customer fit, their culture and values are like ours. And no, they're not. They're a completely different company. And it is going to be so difficult to put the two together from a people perspective, let alone from merging the systems and the operations and different ways of doing things. And being honest, my advice to people would be, if you can grow organically because it is a huge distraction and it's very risky. We did 15 of them, On paper, every one of them are extremely profitable. I have my doubts because I was the integration guy, but they absolutely scale your business quickly, but they come with a lot of risk and a lot of challenge.
And Stuart, you're advising businesses as well as running your own business. But when you're advising businesses, like, do you see that the people, owners or senior managers, are so busy firefighting that they don't have time to really step back and think about operations because they're dealing with the big to-do list that's facing them in any given day?
100%. I mean, that is the big challenge with being an owner-operator. There's so much coming at you. There's so much you have to get right. And being honest with you, Tom, unless you can actually just step back from the day-to-day, try to get above it a little bit, try to make a plan, you're going to have to resource it as well, though, right? You're going to have to resource it from a people perspective. But in order to resource it from a people perspective, you have to have the finance to do it, and you have to have the measurement system to do it. But it is the case. I mean, we all find it. I'm sure you do yourself. I mean, everything is a priority when you run a small business, and you can't do everything. So, I agree with what Jarlath is saying, by the way. I think at our stage of growth for Fitzgerald Power, if we were to look to bolt on a business, I think there's so much going on with the organic growth. The systems aren't mature enough yet to really do it, and know that we would do it right. So I think, look, if you're running a small business, I guess it's about focusing on what you can control, focus on what you can get done right, that will really make a difference, that will really put the platform in for scale, and then understand what you're missing, right? You're not going to have all the attributes yourself. Like, operations and all that stuff just didn't come naturally to me. I was a good sales guy and stuff like that. I had to go out and learn that, and then I had to understand who are the people that can come in to really help me develop the system and deliver this system. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to resourcing.
Just come in on a point you made about the founder owner. Since I left version 1, I've worked with a lot of small to medium sized companies. Surprisingly, the most successful businesses, the CEOs are working less than 50 hours a week. And the ones that are not flourishing are working up to 80 hours a week. And when I've looked at it, it's because one is systematic, has built a good team around, they've got a sales engine going, they've got to invest in the systems, and the others are problem solving every single day. The founder hasn't let go of control, thinks to know everything about the business, and end up working 80 hours a week and getting burned out. So that whole thing of optimizing your operations, building a team around you and investing in your systems is so crucial.
And Stuart, when you're advising a business, you can see this up close. You can see that the founder or the CEO or the senior team, that they're working their asses off, yet the numbers aren't going as quickly as they should. Like, will you step in and try and talk to them, or would you advise, or what advice would you give them?
Look, first of all, it's a great privilege to get that up close and personal with businesses and to help them figure out what's holding them back. So yeah, 100%. I mean, if we're engaged with something like this, Tom, the brief is very much to go in and to share what we can share in terms of what we learned ourselves in other instances, what we learned from our own business, and sometimes it's as simple as helping them to step back, diagnose the problem, and who's the expert you can bring in to help to guide you through this. Because to Jarlath's point, like, it is so true, and we're all so guilty of it. The easiest thing in the world to do is to just throw another 20 hours a week at it and to try to solve all the problems yourself, but that doesn't scale, right? That's not a scalable system. That's going to burn you out. It's going to burn the team out. So to answer your question, I mean, in terms of going into client engagements like that, very much the onus is on us to help the client, the CEO, the founder, to understand where the challenges are and how you're going to navigate those challenges out. Yeah, so absolutely we do.
And Jarlath, when you're running a small business, I mean, you can talk to every member of the team every day when it's that 10 to 20, but when you get to that 50 to 100, you're not talking to everybody every day. How important was communications in terms of bringing the excellent culture into a business, to be able to communicate to the team, this is how we operate, this is how we do things, and I'm not going to be able to talk to you every day like I used to.
Yeah, I think every person you bring in is so critical, up to that 100 people, but it's always critical. But when you're scaling a business, everybody you bring in is so critical that you are bringing people, and this is where we get into the whole area of culture and values fit. But I am involved in 5 or 6 what I would call small companies, and it's a huge challenge for them. They bring in somebody that is in their network that they think is brilliant, and 6 months later they're in serious problems trying to let go of that person or whatever, because they didn't follow a structured process of what do I need here, what are our values, why would this person fit, why wouldn't they fit. They just hire somebody that they think can do a job. So it is where understanding your culture, number one, and hiring people that fit your culture and values, number two. And then secondly, clarity is so important, and clarity comes from communication. So setting up that cadence, that operating rhythm where, and it was said earlier about transparency, sharing your numbers. Transparency is huge. If you give people clarity, this is where we're going. It's like your church fund. This is, we want to get to 1 million in sales, 5 million in sales. This is where we're at. Here's the plans we have in place. Here's where everybody fits in. Then it's far, far easier to.
And do you want to come on that?
Yeah, but so just to say, so I agree fundamentally that, like, when we were 20 people, myself and Noel, like, the culture just was what the culture was, right? It was just this organic thing that was sort of developing, and we knew everyone so well. It took me a huge amount of time to actually figure out how important it was to codifying the values of our business. I did a column about it, actually, and we got a lot wrong with that. But in the end, what we decided to do was to really step back. We ran some detailed workshops. The whole team, the company was maybe 50 people at that time. Everyone contributed to it. It was iterative. We had a few cuts at it. But in the end, we ended up with a set of values that was a really authentic, set of principles that the company would be operated by. And then we start to make all recruitment decisions against those values, Tom. We start to make all internal HR decisions against those values. And over time, we ended up with a group of people that was really aligned, that was really behind the vision, really behind the strategy. And from there, it became about, because we're a knowledge economy business, it became about the learning and development experience. So how do we take those brilliant people now that are aligned with our values, and how do we give them the best possible learning experience so that they can do the best work? And from that, this was fundamental. And it was fundamental for me, and it's fundamental for our leadership team, really getting to the point where we delegate properly. This comes back to your point that working 8 hours a week. If you're working 8 hours a week, it's because you haven't really considered, are decisions being made at the right level? Are you delegating work that just shouldn't be on your plate? And if you can get to that point, then the whole thing just starts to work much more cohesively, right?
Totally.
And just, I'm conscious of your time, guys, but just like a last question would just be, maybe could you give an example from Fitzgerald Power, from version 1, of something that you saw, operationally that when you changed it, or when you adapted it, or when you brought it in, really changed your business?
So for me to begin with?
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that we did, for what it's worth. There's a great book called Scaling People from the COO of Stripe, and Patrick Hollison is actually on the record saying any entrepreneurial challenge that's out there, someone has written a book about it. So we took that book, Scaling People, with the help of our advisory board, we turned it into an operating people system that we could run our business with. And that was really the moment when the wheels started turning in terms of our operating system and the scalability. So look, what's the lesson then? The lesson is the answer is out there if you're willing to ask for help, and if you're willing to self-learn and get some input to refine it.
Jarlath, do you want to come in?
I'll give you 2 examples. One from version 1, quite similar to Stuart's actually, but at about 120 people we brought in. Well, we designed very carefully a quarterly rhythm and brought it in. We refined that over time, and it got to where people said we did 4 years' work in 1 year, because of that rhythm. It was what I talked about earlier, about the clarity, about the transparency, about setting the objectives, and it drove our performance hugely.
But without working 80 hours a week, right?
Without working 80 hours a week, yes, that's the important thing. And then the second one is a company I'm working with at the moment, which is only was 50 people at the beginning of the year. It's over 70 now. But instead of doing the standard trick of we need to grow, we'll hire 2 sales guys, we actually sat down and designed what a sales engine would look like. And it was mentioned earlier about writing your IM or knowing what an investor would look for. They're not looking for a founder that can sell. They're looking for a machine that can sell.
Yeah.
So instead of hiring 2 guys, we invested in marketing. We invested in marketing tools, sales process, doing a sales playbook. We hired 5 people instead of 2. And now we're set next year to do significantly. We couldn't even have dreamt of doing as well next year, but it took us the full 10 months of this year to design that. So I think that will be the biggest thing they'll have done when they look back in a few years' time.
And if I could just jump in very quickly before the end, and not to copy his homework, but the sales system that we put in, similar to that, had a huge impact on on the scalability of the business. And we brought in someone to lead it properly, an ex-Salesforce director to lead it properly. And exactly that, like sales was, sales and BD in our business is very concentrated on a couple of people. Before we had systemized it properly, putting that in properly with someone credible leading it was fundamental for our growth.
Look, I think that was, at that point we might end this panel, but thank you very much, Stuart and Jarlath.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.